Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So, Zuffa Boxing, Dana White, and the launch of the new TKO brand. Well, more information has come to light in regards to what is going on with this new venture. In the last 24 hours or so, it's been announced that Zuffa Boxing and the TKO League has signed a multi-year agreement with Paramount Plus and CBS in America. Initially, it will be for 12 dates, so 12 different cards, with a possibility of more in the future. Now, Dana White's link up with Turki al-Sheikh and the Saudi regime in boxing has caused much of a stir. I think a lot of it is really just hysterical virtue signalling, quite frankly. There's been talks of amending the Ali Act, things of that nature. Not sure how far along that actually is, whether it will happen or not. I'm not particularly bothered, really, to tell you the truth. Ultimately, since the Ali Act has been put in place in boxing, has boxing become any better in the USA? I think that answer is pretty obvious. Secondly, how enforceable is the Ali Act anyway? When you consider that it's supposed to combat, interests between managers, promoters. You can't really be a manager, a promoter at the same time. It's supposed to combat conflicts of interest and, obviously look out for the fighter's best interests. But, just in recent years, we've seen the PBC operation start. They were very powerful for a few years. Obviously, now they've tailed off. But you look at the PBC operation in its heyday, and to me, on the surface, it looked like a blatant violation of said Ali Act. Certain fighters being advised they weren't allowed to take certain paydays if those paydays were on rival promoters' networks or, promotional shows, whatever. And quite frankly, we know what the deal was. Al Heyman was a quasi-promoter as well as being a manager and an advisor, which obviously is an apparent violation of said Ali Act. So how enforceable it was in the first place, I'm not really convinced. I'm not really sure. And, did it make boxing any better for us fight fans? Did it help certain fights get made? I don't think so, personally. So yeah, the whole Ali Act debate for me is just a non-starter, really. People in America, boxing fans in America, kind of view it as this holy grail, whereas in other countries, including here in the UK, it doesn't apply. And yeah, boxing has its problems, but it doesn't come at any major cost, so to speak, that we don't have the equivalent of an Ali Act. But anyway, Zuffa Boxing, 12 dates. 12 dates for the TKO League, with a possibility of more dates in the future. And also there's talks of Zuffa having their own title within this kind of league. And again, a lot of people are getting up in arms about that as well. In regards to the title, listen. If this league is organised and carried out in the way in which it was originally sold, I actually don't have any issue with like a promotional title. This isn't new in boxing. We've had the Muhammad Ali trophy from the World Boxing Super Series. We've had, even at a low level in the UK, prize fighter trophies. Of course, the prize fighter trophy was basically a promotional trophy within Matchroom, albeit at a very low level. It's still a promotional trophy. Boxer, Ben Shalom, they had the Boxer trophy, etc. So the concept of promotional companies having their own trophies or titles is not foreign. And from what is being said in regards to this TKO League, how it's being sold again, I like the concept of it, as I've said before. Basically, how they're selling it is we're going to find up-and-coming fighters who maybe don't have the same opportunities as those highly touted amateurs coming out of America, the UK, etc. We're going to try and scout for unknown talent, put these guys in the league, have these guys fight each other. They're going to learn, they're going to develop. Once they get to the top of that league, they can fight for the title, maybe defend it a few times, and at that point, they can then move on into the upper echelons of boxing. How they're kind of selling it, and Dana White, who is obviously one of the masterminds behind this, he's selling it as like Tuesday night fights back in the day in boxing, or he's selling it as like the Contender Series in the UFC, which is designed to cultivate talent to then go into the main UFC, to maybe fight for titles in the future and fight for ranking spots. That's how this is being sold, and that idea I like. In America, I think there's been a lack of that sort of boxing for a long time, at like a more grassroots level. I know Pro Box recently have come on the scene, and they've been really good, by the way. But Pro Box primarily have been rehabilitating fighters who have lost in like title shots and things of that nature. They also showcase prospects as well, but Pro Box have done a really good job, and they've partially filled that void, but it's not enough. America's a very big country, and there's a lot of talent out there who are not getting their shine, who are not getting opportunities, and I think the TKO League could help with that. Not just people from America, not just fighters from America, but other guys from, who knows, Uzbekistan or fucking Azerbaijan, who knows. But fighters who are not maybe marketable, maybe will have an opportunity to showcase their talent, and if they're good enough, if they get to a certain level, they can then move on to the next level of boxing and fight for real world titles. That's how this is being sold. It's basically being sold as like a feeder league almost to cultivate talent. And that idea in and of itself, I really like. Again, think of like Friday night fights back in the day. Yes, it wasn't structured like this TKO League, but how many prospects did we see come up on those cards? Maybe prospects that were decent amateurs, but they weren't like Olympians or world amateur champions or anything like that. Friday night fights developed so many stars, or so many title contenders, so many title holders. And, Friday night fights in the USA has never really been replaced. I know Pro Box now have partially filled that void, but like I said, I don't think it's enough. So overall, the concept of Zuffa boxing and this so-called league, I really like the concept. If it's carried out in the manner in which they're kind of selling it, I think it's going to be good for boxing. I get people being skeptical, maybe they'll try and turn it into something bigger and create like a monopoly, like the UFC did in MMA. I get there's like reasons to be skeptical, there always is about everything, right? I get it, but I feel like a lot of people have made their minds up before it's even taken off. We've not even had the first card yet. We haven't given it any real time. I feel like a lot of people are willing this to fail. And there's a lot of weird boxing fans like that online. There's a lot of weird boxing fans who, for whatever reason, they just advocate for failure of new ideas in boxing. It's really, really weird. It's really, really strange. I remember when the World Boxing Super Series first kicked off, and people were just hoping it failed for some reason. So bizarre. So bizarre. I'm all for trying new things in boxing. I think boxing does need some rejuvenation, some fresh ideas, some new concepts. Not reinvent the wheel. And I don't want a monopoly at all. But the idea of a TKO League, I do like. I do like the concept of it. How it's managed, how it's run, we shall see. Maybe a year into it, maybe I revise my opinion. Maybe I don't like how it's being run. Maybe I don't like what it's heading towards. But, until I have that new information, I'm not going to come to that opinion. All I'm judging it on really is purely the concept and how it's been sold. And that's how I will judge it for the time being, until we have new evidence and new information at our disposal. But yeah, there's a weird bunch of people who are just totally writing it off right away without giving it a chance. And it's strange. It's very strange. But yeah, I've always liked the idea though of like tournaments and leagues in combat sport. You know, like back in the day with Pride MMA, they had like the Grand Prix tournaments, etc. And recently in boxing, of course, World Boxing Super Series. I love these ideas. I really like these ideas. But obviously, it's harder to implement in boxing. But yeah, I mean, share your thoughts below. What do you think of this TKO League? What are your initial opinions on the concept? I'm not talking about how you think it will pan out necessarily, because it might be a colossal failure, could be a colossal success, could be just in between. Who knows? I'm asking you, what do you feel about the concept? How do you feel about the concept as it's being sold right now? How do you feel about it? Anyway, share your thoughts below. Beanie Guy Delboy, peace.